All right, man. Torch the talk. Like, share, consider subscribing to the page if you like the content. All right, so I'm back. I had to take a little hiatus real quick. A couple of things happened. A couple of shows will be canceled, and yeah. So, uh, I want to talk about the Rings of Power, and I'm just gonna get right into it, and I'm gonna give my assessment of it, you know, and why I feel the way I feel. So, here's my thing, right? You can't really trust these scores. How is it that the audience, the audience score, or the average tomato eater critic is 85%, and the audience rating is 39%. So let's look at the details. Let's look at some of the details here and see what. So it says 85%. So let's go to why the audience has gave it a score. Why can't we get to the audience? I don't think they allow you to do that. Anyway. Now, I watched the show. You see, this is what pisses me off about shows like this, right? It's a clear agenda that you're pushing. Obviously, you're pushing this towards the feminist movement. I mean, the main character, Galadriel or Galadriel or whatever her name is, the main character she comes off as this snarky, very intelligent, can't stop her from anything type of female. She is the goat in this show. Like, you can't do nothing to her. She doesn't nothing wrong. I seen there was a scene where there was an ice troll or ice orc or whatever it was, and all the elves that was around her, they were helpless, and she came and sliced and diced and spin the sword around and killed her. It's like, what are we doing here? What are we doing here? The audience can see right through this. And again, I'm gonna say this. I don't really care for the score. I'm only showing it because this is what is on Rotten Tomato, and I'm gonna get into why I'm showing the score in a second. But for me, I I judge things off of how I see it for myself, and I look at these things. And the crazy part about this show is terrible. It's terrible. It's not a good show. The acting isn't that great. The dialogue is horrible. And it's like, how could you know, even consider this as one of the greatest shows of all time or one of the best shows of all time? And it just goes to show you, right? So as far as the score goes, right, the audience doesn't like it. And I'm hearing that they're saying, oh, well, the reason why is because it was review bombed and they stopped the comments for 72 hours or however long it was. But it still doesn't change the fact that some of those comments, whether it was review bombed or not, some of those comments were actually real. And people really don't like it. Like, when is Hollywood going to get it? But but let me just speak on this. So Rotten Tomato is owned by Warner Brothers, right? NBC, I think, owns a lot of stake or stock or whatever, and then Warner Brothers owns the rest, right? Right. Then the other one is owned by Amazon, the IBM or IGB or whatever it is. I don't know off the top of my head. Just hit me in the comments what it is. But I know that one's owned by Amazon. And that one too is not allowing people to leave comments. Like, and it's not even that people leaving negative comments. If someone says that they feels as though the movie is a 1 or a 2, it's not a negative comment. That's just what they feel. A negative comment would be like, well, I don't care. The movie was good, but I don't like Galadriel's hair. I don't like the way they portrayed her hair. Like, it's corny to me. And what really makes me mad is the forced diversity. It's like, okay, this is fantasy, so that really doesn't bother me that the elves would be black. I don't care whether you, I don't care. If you say, oh, elves shouldn't be black, it doesn't matter because it's fantasy. It's fantasy. So whether somebody said, "Oh well, the lore, the source material had had was based off of the European descents or whatever," it's still fantasy. So that part doesn't really bother me. What bothers me is the forcing of it. It's like you have to let everybody know that this what this is. See, if this is the reason why House of Dragon is so much better than this show. Because they didn't come out and forcefully say, this is for representation. Now, I'm sure that there's someone that said that. But for the most part, the show doesn't tell you that. They just go on like it's normal. And I think that's how it should be. If there were going to be black elves in this show, you shouldn't have said nothing. You should have just made the movie and that's it. What's the point of you telling me it's a black elf when we already know that it's a black elf? It's not like it's not a black elf. We know because we see it. So what's the point of you telling me that, oh, and it's like just certain things didn't make sense. Even though it's a fantasy, some things have to make sense. It has to make sense, you know? And on a to be on the flip side of that, I could understand why people were a little bit upset about it. I can because guess what? If Black Panther came out and all the casting were white, people would feel some type of way about it. And so, oh, it's fantasy. It's just fantasy, right? So either way, I look at it like it shouldn't be a force of diversity. It should just be diversity. That's it. Why are you forcing it? Just go ahead and do the show and go about your business. And whether people gonna like it or they're not. It's simple as that. But if you every time we turn around, you have to explain to us, this is the first transgender, or this is the first, this is the first, this is the first, this is the first. Yeah, we get it. But for the most part, if it wouldn't have had mattered if the story was good. It wouldn't have mattered if the story was good. If the story was good, people wouldn't have had cared. But people think that the story is trash. That's the thing. And this is the reason why you get what you get. As far as the cinematography goes, I'm gonna go on record and say this. I seen it and I thought the show looked good. I thought it looked expensive. I thought it looked good. But it looks fake. It looks fake. At least with House of the Dragon, it looks more real. That's a little more believable. But this looks like a fantasy epic novel. There's no comparison to me. You can't compare the two. Now, maybe off of it being a fantasy, yes, but show wise, that's a kid show compared to an adult show. It's like fantasy versus kind of real life in a way. And this is the reason why I think House of the Dragon is by far the better show. Like by far. It's just, even though, and I'm gonna do a House of the Dragon video too, so I'm not gonna go on a tangent about that, but it's just it's crazy to me how we look at this and we say that this is actually pretty good. And I see people online and they're just lying to themselves. They're lying to the public. They're lying. A lot of people are just saying the show is good because people were saying it's not good. And a lot of people were saying the show isn't good because people were saying it's good. But for the most part, you don't get a 39. It's actually lower, but it went up. It was 38. I think it's 37, but it went up to 38. Now it's 30. You don't get that unless people really don't like it. And you don't stop people from reviewing it unless you're scared. Now, what's the point if you're saying that people are racist and they review bombing it because there's diversity in it? Well, there's diversity in House of the Dragon. Let's check out House of the Dragon. Check out House of the Dragon's score. Let's check out House of the Dragon score and see what that's hitting for. Yeah, there's diversity in this show too. So how is it that it's an 85 and the critics is an 85? There's diversity in this show too. It just goes to show you people don't care about that. Because if that was the case, this show would be trash too. It's not about being review bombed. It's because people don't like things that are not genuine. It's forced. That's why. It's forced. There's no difference. That's what it is. It's forced. And this is the reason why people relate to this more. And don't get me wrong. I'm sure that there may be a bigger audience for the Rings of Power. It may be a bigger audience. But if people like the material, guess what? This is it. And I'm sure you probably can read the reviews on that. People don't care about changing the characters to that point where they actually don't like the show. They might just nitpick that part, or they might say, "Oh, well, elves shouldn't be black." But if the storyline is good, they're not gonna give a fuck if the elves are purple. They're not gonna care. Oh, this person should. Oh, this a woman shouldn't be doing this. There's plenty of women in this show that are strong women, but guess what? They're flawed, like real women are. And not to say that that's something wrong. It's just people are flawed. The men are flawed, the women are flawed. That's why this works, because it's, even though it's a fantasy, it's still based around reality in some type of way. But when you have a show like Rings of Power or She-Hulk, and I'm definitely doing a review on She-Hulk, when you have a show like that where it just shows women just and unbelievably good at everything, people don't like that. Not even women, because they look at it and say, "Oh, this bitch, ain't no way in the world she didn't even train for that." That's what they're saying in their head. No, no. And they just turn it off. Because it's like, no. So show what really happens. And that's it, man. But yeah, like I said, you know, show isn't good. I watched the first 2 episodes. I will watch the third. I'm gonna watch the whole thing because that's what I do. And so far, it was just boring and it just looked good. And that's another thing that annoys me. When you put all this money into something to make it look really good, just so, why didn't you put that much money into the writers? I don't understand that. Because a lot of the writers that y'all have on these shows nowadays, they're just activists and they just want to project how they feel and what they believe the world should be. It's like, this is a fantasy novel. Like, come on. And you're talking about stuff that has nothing to do with, like, what? I don't know, man. Rings of Power. It's terrible. Just trash. Torture Talk.